Dear friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Nitesh Goyal from DAV College, Chandigarh. I am going to present before you the 16th module titled Questionnaires and Schedules under the paper Tourism and Hospitality Research. The module will cover the following topics: the introduction, the questionnaires, the merits of questionnaires, the demerits of questionnaires, the general aspects of questionnaires, the prerequisites of a good questionnaire, the schedules, and the difference between the questionnaires and schedules, and finally, the summary. Dear friends, after the completion of this module, you will be able to understand the meaning of the questionnaires, know the benefits of using the questionnaires and limitations that it faces. Also, you will be able to understand the meaning of schedules, also differentiate between the schedules and questionnaires. First of all, friends, I would like to give you a brief introduction about the topic. Dear friends, till now you must have become versed with the basics of research and have become aware of the various techniques of data collection. You must also be aware that out of all the methods, questionnaire method of data collection is most popular. Thus, at this point of time, it becomes very important to take an in-depth insight into the questionnaire and the related concepts. This module has specifically been designed to make the learner accustomed with the questionnaires and how it is used. Having complete knowledge of questionnaires actually proves to be of great help for the researcher. This module deals with the basics of questionnaires, its application, the schedules, and the alike concepts. Let us now understand what a questionnaire is. As stated earlier also, questionnaire method of data collection is one of the most widely and extensively used technique, especially in case the study is being conducted at a large scale. This method has been adopted by every type of researcher, whether he is an individual, an organization, private or government, or any such research agency. Under the questionnaire technique of data collection, a specified set of questions is sent to the persons who have formed the part of the sample called as respondents also. This set of questions is termed as the questionnaire, which is sent with an expectation that the respondent will reply to the questions and return the questionnaire back to the researcher. Thus, a questionnaire can simply be called as a document that consists of a number of questions in printed or typed form or set of forms, and also in a specified order. The questionnaire is then administered to the select respondents, who in turn would carefully read and understand each of the question and then reply in the spaces provided for the purpose within the questionnaire itself. The respondents have to answer the questions on their own without taking assistance from anybody else. Let us now take on the merits of the questionnaires. The merits are: firstly, economical. When the subject matter or the sample respondents is large and widely spread, this method of data collection proves to be very economical. The cost involved in this case is to get the multiple copies of questionnaire, whether through printouts or the photostat copies. Another cost that is involved is the cost of postage for sending the questionnaires. However, if the online medium is used to distribute the questionnaire, it becomes totally free. Secondly, free from biasness. The responses provided by the respondents are given by themselves without the interference or the influence of the researcher, enabling the respondent to give a fair view and hence make it free from any prejudice or biasness. Thirdly, sufficiency of time. Questionnaire method provides ample time to the respondents. Once it reaches the respondent, he or she can fill it in his very free time and give well thought of replies. Fourthly, convenient. The questionnaire method enables the researcher to reach those respondents also who are not easily accessible. Fifthly, good for large sample size. Under this method, the researcher may consider to undertake a larger size of sample, making the results and outcomes of the study more dependable, reliable, and representative of the whole population. Having listed the merits of the questionnaires, it cannot be concluded that it is a foolproof method or an error-free method. This method also suffers some demerits or limitations. The main demerits and limitations of this method are as: firstly, low response rate. There is a great possibility that the respondents don't even fill the questionnaire. It has been observed under many studies that have adopted the questionnaire method does not get satisfactory number of responses. Many a times, response rate is even less than 20%. In simpler words, if the questionnaire is sent to 100 people, only 20 would respond it. Thus, it is always advised to send out more questionnaires than the actual sample size. Secondly, lacks control. As per this method, the questions are to be sent, the researcher loses his control over the questionnaire once it is dispatched. Thirdly, inflexibility. Questionnaires have got an inbuilt inflexibility because of the difficulty of making changes once the questionnaires have been dispatched. Fourthly, redundant replies. There is a greater chance of receiving of vague replies or even incomplete replies altogether. Such incomplete questionnaires are of no use to the researcher and hence make it difficult for the researcher to put such data for analysis. Fifthly, lack of authentication. It is almost impossible to authenticate the responses. In simple words, it is very difficult to make out whether the actual respondents have themselves filled the questionnaire or they have got it filled from someone else. Sixthly, time consuming. Since under this method, the questionnaires are sent to the target respondents, the researcher has to wait for the responses and cannot help its early recovery. Thus, it may prove to be a time-consuming job and the researcher may get disinterested. It is always advised that before applying this method, the researcher must undertake a pilot study or a pilot survey so that the questionnaire can be tested for its reliability and validity. Pause. A pilot study has a great role to play in any study, especially when the study is being conducted at a large scale. A pilot study is kind of a replica of the actual survey or a kind of a rehearsal for the main survey. A pilot study helps the researcher to get an insight into the shortcomings and limitations of the questionnaires and also of the other techniques so that the weaknesses found can be removed. Friends, let us now throw some light on the general aspects of the questionnaire. In a study where primary data are to be collected, questionnaires are considered as the heart and soul of that survey. Hence, utmost care needs to be given while constructing a questionnaire. However, if the researcher is unable to give proper attention to the questionnaire, it will not be set up properly, leading to more chances of failure of the survey. Questionnaires having such importance in the study, it becomes very important to understand the main aspects of a questionnaire. That is, the general form, the question sequence, and question formulation and wording. Researchers should note the following with regard to these three main aspects of a questionnaire. Number 1, the general form. As far as the general form of any questionnaire is concerned, it can either be a structured or an unstructured one. A structured questionnaire is a questionnaire that includes questions that are definite, concrete, and predetermined. The questions are presented with the same language and words and in the same order to all of the target respondents of the study. The questionnaires are standardized due to the reason that the researcher expects that all the respondents should reply to the same questions and thus making all the responses comparable. The questions may be asked in different forms. That is, it may be closed-ended. Closed-ended means having limited or fixed responses like yes or no. Or on the other hand, there can be open-ended questions. That is, no restrictions on the responses. It means inviting the respondents to give the responses of their own choice. However, the questions should be framed in advance and should not be constructed during the process of questioning. Thus, a structured questionnaire is the one in which the questions are predefined and any comments in the words of the respondents are recorded to the minimum. The questionnaires that do not have the above mentioned features are termed as the unstructured questionnaires. In simple words, it can be stated that in an unstructured questionnaire, exact questions to be asked are not provided. Rather, the interviewer is given an overall direction on the kind of information that has to be collected. Thus, it becomes the entire responsibility of the researcher how to collect the desired information without having a predefined set of questions. Friends, under an unstructured questionnaire, the responses are to be collected in the words of the respondents to the extent possible. In some cases, the researcher takes the help of electronic devices to record the statements of the respondents and thus collect the information, like through tape recorders, etc. A structured questionnaire is relatively simple to administer and less expensive to analyze. However, the structured questionnaires have some drawbacks too. For instance, a wide range of data and that too in respondents' own words cannot be obtained with the help of a structured questionnaire. Number 2. Question sequence. Question sequence is the order in which the questions are asked. Thus, to make the questionnaire more effective and to ensure quality of the responses, a researcher should pay due attention to the sequence of the questions while preparing the questionnaire. A proper sequence of questions help in reducing the chances of confusion and helps the respondent maintain a good flow while responding to the individual questions. The sequence of questions must move smoothly in the questionnaire, meaning thereby that the one question should relate to the question following it and it should relate to it logically. It's thumb rule that easiest questions must be asked in the beginning and level of difficulty should be increased gradually. The initial questions of the questionnaire hold great relevance because the first few questions will influence the overall attitude and behavior of the respondent towards the questionnaire and increase the chances of cooperation and lesser biasness. Moreover, the questionnaire should be presented in a funnel shape. Now, by the funnel shape, we mean that the general questions should be asked in beginning and specific questions should follow them. This helps in creating the interest of the respondent and making him familiar with the study. Number 3. Question formulation and language. As far as this aspect of questionnaire is concerned, the researcher must pay attention to keep the questions very clear and crisp so as to avoid any kind of misunderstanding that dilute the whole essence and the purpose of the study. Questions should be unbiased, ensuring that it does not incline towards any specific aspect and against the other. In general, all the questions contained in the questionnaire should meet the following criteria. Number 1. The questionnaire should be easy to understand. Number 2. The questionnaire should be such that it conveys only one thought at a time. Number 3. The questionnaire should be concrete and should conform as much as possible to the respondent's way of thinking. Number 4. The questions in a questionnaire should not be vague. Number 5. Questions asked should not be loaded with some assumptions. Having designed a questionnaire, but whether it is going to be effective or not depends upon how good the questionnaire is. The goodness of the questionnaire may be decided by keeping in mind some of the following points. First, short and simple. To be a good questionnaire, it should be kept short and simple. The size of the questionnaire should be kept as minimum as possible. However, it should not be so short that it is unable to obtain the required information. Number 2. Logical sequence. As stated earlier also, that the sequence of the questions should acquire a funnel shape, placing general questions in the beginning, then to placing the specific questions later. Personal and intimate questions should be asked at the end of the questionnaire. Avoid using technical terms. Technical terms, the jargons should be avoided to the extent possible, as the respondent may not be well versed with such terms and thus get reluctant in giving the responses. Number 4. Contain control questions. The questionnaire should always have some control questions, as they will help the researcher to know the reliability of the respondent. For instance, a question asked to determine the consumption of a commodity may be asked in the beginning in monetary terms, and the same question may be asked at the end of the questionnaire in terms of quantity. This will help the researcher cross-check the information given by the respondent. Next, it should not hurt personal sentiments. Utmost care should be given while using the language of the questions so that it does not hurt the sentiments of the respondents. Number 6. Adequate space for the responses. While designing the questionnaire, the researcher must provide sufficient space to allow the respondent to record his responses properly and in order. Number 7. Brief instructions. It is very important that the researcher provides a brief set of instructions to be followed by the respondents with regard to filling up of the questionnaire. These instructions help the respondent overcome any kind of confusion. Number 8. The physical appearance. So the last but not the least, the physical appearance of the questionnaire also plays a key role in effectiveness of a questionnaire. If the questionnaire appears to be attractive, it becomes the added advantage for the researcher and helps create interest into the questionnaire. The physical appearance may include features like well-typed, quality of the paper, along with the use of color, font type, font size, etc. A lot has now been told about the questionnaires. Let us now take on the schedules. Data collection through schedules is very similar to that of collection of data through a questionnaire, but not the same. The main difference lies in the fact that through a questionnaire, through a schedule, that is, the document containing the set of questions, the data is filled in by the investigator himself, who is specially appointed for this purpose. Such investigators, along with schedules, meet the target respondents at their place or any agreed place and get the schedules filled. The appointed investigators then explain the aims and the objectives of the study undertaken and also help clarify the questions and remove the difficulties which any respondent might feel in understanding what actually has been proposed to be asked in any question. The data collection through schedules require selection of enumerators or the investigators for getting the schedules filled and help the respondent to fill up the schedules properly. Before sending the investigator in the field for final data collection, he or she should be trained fully to perform well. They should also be explained with the nature and scope of the investigation thoroughly. Investigators should possess sufficient capability to cross-examine the respondents to ensure that the real responses and the truth comes out. Since the responses are to be filled in by the investigator himself, he should possess the qualities of being honest, sincere, and hardworking. It is important that the investigator shows enough patience and perseverance. This method of data collection is very useful in extensive inquiries and can lead to fairly reliable results. However, This method is quite expensive and is usually undertaken by the governmental agencies or the large-scale organizations. Population census is the best example for the schedules as it is conducted through this method only across the globe. However, this method also suffers a drawback of biasness from the investigator. Since the schedules are to be filled by the investigator himself, he may influence the respondent to answer the question in a desired way or record altogether a different response even. Friends, let us now take on the differences between these two methods. Questionnaires and schedules are one of the most used methods of data collection in research surveys. There is quite a resemblance in the basic nature of the two methods and thus many a times considered as same by many researchers. However, technically both the methods are different from each other. The important points of differences are, these differences are based on different bases. The first difference is based on the mode of administration. The questionnaire is generally administered through mails to the respondent along with a cover note explaining the instructions to fill the questionnaire. Whereas under schedules, the schedule is generally filled by the researcher or the investigator or the enumerator himself or herself in his or her own hand. Secondly, the economy involved. Under the questionnaire, data collection is comparatively cheaper as the money spent is majorly only on the preparing of questionnaire and then mailing them to respondents. Also, there is no requirement of field staff, whereas in case of schedules, it is relatively more expensive. As apart from expenses of preparing the schedules, a good amount of money has to be paid to the investigators or the enumerators who collect the data. The third basis of difference is the non-response error. In case of questionnaires, there is a higher chance of non-response as many people may not respond and even return the questionnaires blank. Thus, any biasness remains undetermined in this case. However, in case of the schedules, chances of non-response are almost negligible as because these are filled in by the investigators themselves who are able to get the answers to all the questions. However, there is indeed a possibility of investigators' own prejudice and cheating. The fourth basis is about the authentication of the respondent. In case of questionnaire, there is a problem of authentication of the respondent. One can never know that whether the respondent himself has filled the questionnaire or has got it filled from someone else. However, in case of schedules, it actually solves the problem of authentication as the investigator would approach the actual respondent himself and get the responses recorded. The next point of difference is on the basis of speed. The questionnaire method is relatively very slow as many respondents do not even return the questionnaires in the time despite several reminders. However, in case of schedules, the case is different. The data can be collected well in time by the investigators. The next basis of difference is the personal contact. In case of questionnaire method, personal contact is usually not possible as the questionnaires are sent to the respondents by post or some other mode of communication, who also in turn returns the filled questionnaire through the same mode. However, in case of schedules, direct personal contact is always established with the respondents. Now, when the literacy of the respondents is concerned, under the questionnaire method, it can only be used when the respondents are literate and cooperative. However, schedules are the best option in case the respondents are not adequately qualified or even totally illiterate. The next basis of difference is the sample quality. Under the questionnaire method, a wider and more representative distribution of the sample is possible. But in respect of schedules, there usually remains the difficulty in sending the investigators over a relatively wider area. Now, as far as the effectiveness is concerned, The effectiveness of questionnaire method depends on the quality of the questionnaire itself. However, in case of schedules, the effectiveness depends upon the competence of the investigator. The last basis of difference is the physical appearance of the tool. Now, under the questionnaire, in order to attract the attention of the respondents, the physical appearance of the questionnaire must be quite attractive. However, this may not hold true in case of the schedules, as they are to be filled in by the investigators and not by the respondents. Friends, after having discussion on the schedules, the questionnaires and their differences, let us now sum up the whole lecture. Questionnaires and schedules are both equally important tools of collecting data in any survey research study. A questionnaire is a piece of document that consists of a series of questions in printed or typed form or set of forms, which are placed in a specified order and logical sequence, and then are filled in by the respondent himself or herself. A questionnaire is an effective tool but suffers some limitations also, like low response rate, loss of control, the possibility of vague replies, and others. Thus, keeping few tips in mind like simple language, the attractiveness, etc., can make a questionnaire more usable and effective. A similar type of tool is that of the schedules. It is very similar but still different from the questionnaire in the sense that schedules, the document that contains the set of questions, are being filled in by the investigator himself. This tool of data collection requires selection of investigators for filling up the schedules and help the respondents understand and respond to the questions asked. No one tool is better of the two, but may prove to be better in different situations. Thus, selection of any one of the two tools will depend largely on the requirements and the needs of the study. Thank you.